G'day, welcome back to DC Extra. My name is Chris, and in today's video we will dive into Justice League Throne of Atlantis, the fourth entry into my DCAMU rewatch series. And if you stick around to the end, I'll also cover the Nightwing and Robin short that was released alongside this movie. Anyway, without further ado, let's get into it. The movie opens in the Mariana Trench aboard the SS California. The submarine is attacked by a force that for now remains mysterious. But if you've watched the whole movie already, you will know that it is the Atlanteans, specifically a small group of them working for Prince Orm and Black Manta. The submarine goes down and the opening credits play. In the sequence we see each member of the Justice League, starting with Wonder Woman, followed by the Flash, Superman, Green Lantern, Batman, Cyborg, and finally Aquaman, who is new to this movie as he was not seen in the previous Justice League War. These characters are voiced by Rosario Dawson, Christopher Gorham, Jerry O'Connell, Nathan Fillion, Jason O'Mara, Shemar Moore, and Matt Lanter, respectively. Noticeably, Shazam is missing from this opening sequence despite being in the movie, and he is played by Sean Astin once again. In Metropolis, we enter Star Labs, where Colonel Steve Trevor talks to someone on the phone, talking about the Justice League and his new role as their government liaison. Most likely this role was given to him by Wonder Woman, as the two of them were quite close in the previous movie. We hear that the name of the team was changed just a week before this scene, being changed from the name Super 7, which Shazam gave them on a whim at the end of Justice League War. A poor worker is now forced to take down a sign that would have just recently went up, as this movie takes place around a week after the first, as we will see most characters are exactly where we left them in the last movie. Additionally, Heath Corson, the writer on both Justice League films, confirms that this movie is set roughly a week after the first.
When we pick up, it's basically, I think, a week later from where War ended. It's very, very soon.
Next, we focus on Victor Stone, aka Cyborg. First, we enter his dream, where he's running alongside a woman, who is presumably a friend, but this dream is interrupted as his computer half of his subconscious wakes him up. Dr. Sarah Charles, who works alongside Vic's father, comes to check up on him, after he recently had an operation to replace his lung with a cybernetic replacement, allowing him to be more useful in the field, as we will shortly see. In this scene, we immediately pick up on a dynamic between Vic and Sarah, where they each flirt with each other, but Vic, being unsure of himself, doesn't really show his interest enough and lets her walk away. Colonel Trevor enters the room Vic was in and shows him a report of a submarine that sank in the mid-Pacific, which clearly is referring to the previously mentioned SS California from the opening scene. Vic agrees to investigate in person, taking a boom tube to get down there. And if you don't remember what a boom tube is, it is apocalyptic technology that he is able to control since his transformation was caused by a mother box, another piece of apocalyptic technology. We learn all of that through Justice League War, and if you want to find out about that, go on and check my previous breakdown. We learn here that the rest of the Justice League members don't actually come in.
Despite what you would like the world to think, Colonel Trevor, there is no Justice League.
In Athens, Greece, we meet Wonder Woman and Superman admiring the view, sharing their experience of isolation and loneliness, being so different from the rest of humanity, but also unlike the gods either. This forms a basis for their relationship going forward, as Superman shows Wonder Woman how to connect with humanity as he has done through his persona of Clark Kent. We will see more about this play out later though. Now going to Mercy Reef, Maine, we see our soon-to-be new Justice League member, Arthur Curry, talking to a lobster about how he buried his father last week. His death could have been potentially caused by the apocalypse invasion that occurred in Justice League War. However, that's purely speculation on my part. We just know that both events took place about a week earlier. A mysterious red-headed woman watches him from the other side of the bar. We later learn her name to be Mirror, and we follow her more closely. He sure does give us some entertainment though, as Arthur promptly gets into a fight against some much larger men after they try to order his lobster friend for dinner. Ultimately, he defeats them and frees the lobster by throwing it back into the ocean. This whole altercation was viewed not only by Mera, but also Dr. Stephen Shin, a marine biologist reporting to a guy named David, but we may know him better as Black Manta. Cyborg now visits the shipwreck, or submarine wreck as it were, scanning the location, trying to piece together what happened. He discovers that the security footage is corrupted, and the missiles on board have been stolen. He then gets attacked by unseen assailants and retreats, not knowing how to defeat them at the moment. And the reason he's able to actually survive underwater is due to his new lung that we learnt about at the beginning of this movie. After discovering what was on the submarine, he alerts the rest of the Justice League, but only 2 other members show up, that being Flash and Shazam.
The human internet router's having trouble getting the word out.
Let's do it the old-fashioned way.
The Flash runs to Ferris Air Base to alert Hal Jordan, aka Green Lantern, while also cock-blocking him in the process.
I'm gonna disembowel you, Barry.
Clark and Diana eat in a Greek restaurant, presumably in Metropolis, as Lois Lane runs into them. One thing I pick up on in this scene is the difference between Clark and Diana. While they are still early in their relationship and don't see it themselves, they have very different viewpoints on how they should interact with humanity. Clark becoming one of them, while Diana believing she just hides among them. While a small difference, Clark is as much a part of his life as Superman, and is therefore very important to him. And without spoiling the rest of the DCAMU too much, this will go on to be a key point in their relationship. Anyway, as I mentioned, Lois runs into them. Safe to say, Clark is a little awkward in this situation, though there is a bit of a funny line Lois says.
It's a wonder women go out with you at all.
Being a not so subtle nod to Diana being Wonder Woman, unknown to Lois though. In the background of this scene, there is a woman sitting at another table that looks quite like Cassie Sandsmark, aka Wonder Girl. While never actually being formally introduced in this universe, I'd like to think that this is a subtle nod to her character from the comics, though here she seems to be more of a Shazam fan as seen by her shirt. Interrupting their date, Shazam and Cyborg come to collect Wonder Woman and Superman for their meeting. Now Batman is the only member not present for the meeting, so Hal decides to go collect him. In Gotham, Batman chases down Scarecrow goons, and Hal, thinking he's helping, apprehends them. But Batman bites his head off as he was trying to frighten them and get information out of them, telling Hal not to help him in the future. Back at Star Labs, now the League investigates the submarine, which has been brought up from the bottom of the ocean, presumably via boom tube or Superman carrying it. Cyborg displays a holographic reimagining of his attack in the sub.
Kinda cool. Like watching a 3D movie with no glasses.
Now being able to freeze frame, they are able to see what their attackers look like and discuss their tactics, noticing their ability to fight with great precision and skill underwater. Diana discusses the possibility of this being Atlantis, as she has read up on them as a child. Shazam mentions a professor he saw on TV once, and Cyborg finds out he was talking about Dr. Stephen Shin. Batman and Cyborg go to talk to him while the rest of the team work on finding Atlantis. Diving back into the ocean for a minute, we see Atlantis for the first time, where Orm and Black Manta talk about their plans. Specifically, they allude to the fact that they were behind the attack on the SS California, saying it was a preemptive strike, believing that the surface would attack them sooner or later. We also learn that Orm's mother, Queen Atlanna of Atlantis, does not see it the same way, but they say that she will soon have no choice, indicating that their plans are far from over. I want to make a quick reminder here that at the end of Justice League War, a post-credit scene showed the death of Orm's father, who was, at the time, King of Atlantis, which is why Orm moves forward with his plans now that his more lenient mother is the ruler. Additionally, he believes that the surface world was behind his father's death, despite it being Apocalypse, which was actually an off-world threat. Once again, we see Mera. She's guarding the throne, where the Queen awaits Orm's arrival. Orm makes a pass at Mera, showing his infatuation of her, something which she does not reciprocate at all, and she even states that she will die sooner than being with him. Proving Orm right, Queen Atlanna says that Orm's actions were not justified, and that as long as she is the ruler of Atlantis, peace will be preserved at all costs. This makes Orm aware, more than ever, to continue with his plan, his mother needs to be removed from the throne, one way or the other. This is the first time we see the Trident of Poseidon and the power it has over people, able to push Orm and Black Manta back, forcing them to kneel. Atlanta shares her reservations of Orm with Mera, stating that he is too problematic to take her place as ruler, asking Mera to bring Arthur to her, who happens to be her firstborn son, and therefore rightful ruler of Atlantis. Black Manta loads the stolen missiles into his submarine, and even disguises it as a US submarine. Using the disguise and artillery, he attacks Atlantis, making it appear as though the surface is attacking them, supposedly proving Orm right. Meanwhile, on the surface, Dr. Shin visits Arthur's home, attempting to talk with him. However, he's killed by Black Manta's men, known as the Drift. With Shin out of the way, they attack Arthur, and while he holds his own for a while, he's ultimately overrun. Luckily for him, Mera arrives to lend a hand, saving his life. Mera quickly dispatches of the Drift through the use of her hydrokinetic powers. She takes Arthur into the ocean while he's unconscious. Batman and Superman visit Dr. Shin's home to find that his work has been destroyed, leading them to believe he is dead, which of course we know to be correct. They do, however, find pictures of Arthur, and a note from his father telling them that Arthur is half Atlantean. Back in Star Labs, the League continues to attempt locating Atlantis, but get interrupted when Batman tells them to go to Arthur's lighthouse instead. Back in Atlantis, Queen Atlanta once again strives for peace, despite Orm's protests. However, seeing his point this time, she plans a meeting with the Justice League to sort out the situation. Regaining consciousness, Arthur wakes up under the ocean and formally meets Mera. She explains why his mother left him, that being because, being royalty, she was promised to their king and forced to return to Atlantis, despite loving Arthur's father and wishing to stay on the surface with them both. Mera leads Arthur to some ancient ruins and gives him the king's royal garments. He puts them on, but immediately feeling dumb, takes most of the armor off, leaving the shirt and pants on, giving us the iconic Aquaman outfit, or a version thereof. He swims up to a nearby island, where he is attacked by creatures known as the Trench. He and Mera fight them off as best as they can, and the Justice League even comes to lend a hand. The League makes quick work of these creatures, especially Superman, who scares the rest of them away. After some convincing, Arthur agrees to accompany Mera to Atlantis, with various members of the League accompanying them, specifically the ones who can survive being underwater, that being Cyborg with his new mechanical lung, Green Lantern whose ring can create him a protective aura, along with Wonder Woman and Superman, who can both hold their breath for a while. They do talk underwater though, so I don't really think that this should be able to happen as their lungs will still fill with water, but it's not really particularly important to the plot, just a little issue I picked up on. While on their way to Atlantis though, Orm and Black Manta attack the Queen, and Orm kills his mother, before Arthur can ever reach Atlantis. With his mother now deceased, Orm takes her trident, now becoming the ruler of Atlantis. When the League gets to Atlantis, they find out that the Queen is dead, supposedly killed by a surface dweller. But we know the truth. The Atlanteans now go off to war against the surface. Orm greets his brother and admits to killing Atlanta, only to get them to attack him, and with his trident he is easily able to take down not only Arthur, but the rest of the League, encasing them in some form of cocoon. We learn in this fight that only royalty can wield the trident, as Superman tries to take it from Orm and is taken down by its defenses. Additionally, I should mention that the reason the trident is effective against Superman is because it channels magic, one of Superman's weaknesses, along with the well-known kryptonite. The crystallized League is thrown into the trench and fed to a monster that lives down there. Orm leads the Atlanteans to war and initiates a massive tidal wave across the whole eastern seaboard of the US. Since only Batman, Flash and Shazam are on the surface, they acknowledge that they are ill-equipped to deal with this, and many people will die as a result. Back in the trench, Arthur remembers that a person with royal blood can control the trident's magic, and since his cocoon was made by that trident, he's able to escape. The other members of the League are about to be eaten though, so he also frees Superman to get his help defeating the monster. Arthur then calls a whale to move the rest of the League to safety, while Superman buries the monster under a pile of rocks. The League get out of their own cocoons and reconvene. Their reunion is short-lived though, as Batman informs them of the tidal wave headed for Metropolis. Fortunately, the tidal wave stops just before reaching Metropolis. It does, however, hide Orm's army, which promptly lays siege to the city. The army, headed by General Sam Lane, who happens to be Lois Lane's father, does their best to hold them off, but are severely outmatched. The Justice League arrives to help, standing much more of a chance against the Atlanteans. Using tactics they have learnt throughout the film, they are able to hold them off. That's not to say none of the humans stand their own, as we see construction worker John Henry take a hammer to one of them. And while Superman does have to save him from additional attackers, this is only the beginning of John Henry's story. Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane are saved by Wonder Woman, and she takes down half a dozen Atlanteans. Lois says she doesn't want to be on her bad side, which is kind of ironic because, unknown to her, Wonder Woman is dating the object of her admiration, Clark Kent. Arthur and Black Manta fight, with Manta admitting that he was behind everything, using Orm's insecurities to coax him into a war, stating that he will even kill him once everything is over. But before he can say anything else, Manta gets eaten by a shark, thanks to Arthur. Orm uses his Trident's magic against Shazam, which transforms himself into his younger version of Billy Batson. To his aid comes Cyborg, who is quickly taken down also. Wonder Woman does her best to keep the Trident out of Orm's hands, but ultimately is unsuccessful. The Flash and Green Lantern lay down cover fire, while Superman attacks Orm with his heat vision. Unfortunately, due to his weakness to magic, Orm is able to take him down using his trident. Batman asks Green Lantern for information, to which he tells him that Orm killed his mother. This they will ultimately use against him, leading to his downfall. Now, brother against brother, Orm and Arthur fight, with Arthur holding his own quite well for a while. Unfortunately, he is no match for the Trident's magic. Batman finds a damaged Cyborg low on energy, but using a taser, he's able to provide him with some juice and powers him back up. Now with Cyborg back up, Batman enlists his help to show the Atlanteans the truth about Queen Atlanna's murder, showing them their confrontation from earlier on in the film, as recorded by Cyborg. Now knowing the truth, the Atlanteans turn against their would-be king. Distracted by this revelation, Arthur is able to take down Orm and take his trident. Arthur makes a speech and leads the Atlanteans, vowing to bridge this surface and underwater worlds, and bring them to peace as a product of both. Oh, and also, he and Mera kiss. Cyborg gets repaired at Star Labs, and he finally gets the nerve to ask out Sarah. We also see a rebranded logo in the lab, which looks like the Justice League of America logo from the comics, just minus the America. Of course, there have been many iterations of the logo throughout the years, so please correct me if I'm wrong and there was an actual Justice League logo looking like this. The League travels down to Atlantis to view Arthur's coronation. I've got to say though, the way they are able to survive down here is a bit inconsistent. For one, Shazam needs a breathing mask, while Superman and Wonder Woman don't. And personally, I see them three kind of surviving in water the same way. Additionally, both the Flash and Batman are able to withstand the pressure that far under the water, as the human body is able to survive only about 700 meters underwater, and for the most part they are completely human. In Batman's case, very much completely. So they should be well dead. Anyway, once again, it doesn't really reflect the plot, but it's a bit of a strife I had. Batman wants to solidify the team, having weekly meetings and keep watch, to which Cyborg mentions he has been making plans for a watchtower. A clear nod to their base of operations in the comics. They all agree to this, and even invite Arthur, formally giving him the nickname Aquaman, which he immediately hates. Arthur says that he should keep one foot in both worlds to help repair relations between Atlantis and the surface. Ending off the movie, the Trench attempt to attack Atlantis, but Aquaman easily holds them off. As a post-credit scene, we see Orm being held in Belle Reve to his protest. He even has a pool to swim in there. Lex Luthor visits him though, with a proposition. We don't actually see much come of this, but we do learn that Orm attacks the Justice League again with an army of mutated sea creatures, potentially using the Trench again. And this could have been part of Lex's proposition. We don't really know much for certain on that front. Now I want to discuss some key differences between this movie and the comic book it was based on. that comic being titled Throne of Atlantis as well. It was actually a crossover between Justice League and Aquaman titles at the time. The crossover event is called Throne of Atlantis, so I'm sure you'll be able to find it that way. One main difference was that Arthur was already a member of the Justice League and had previously been King of Atlantis. In fact, the warplanes that follows were created by Arthur himself. This is a big change, as it makes Arthur out to be more of an innocent in this movie, with no ties to Atlantis besides his heritage. Another point of difference is the fact that Cyborg gets his mechanical lung through the course of the story, not before it. This serves as a point of conflict within him, as he wants to keep as much of his human body as possible, but ultimately agrees to get the replacement as long as he keeps his heart and brain, a sentiment which he also shares in the movie. The biggest difference, though, is the character of Vulko, who in the comics is basically a royal advisor to Arthur. In this movie, though, he is completely left out. In the comic, we end up finding that he was secretly behind the conflicts between Atlantis and the surface, all a ploy to get Arthur back on the throne instead of his brother Orm. Some additional things I want to discuss, not related to the comic, but a bit of a spoiler for future DCAMU movies. So if you don't want to listen to this part, feel free to skip ahead to the Nightwing and Robin short at the timestamp shown on screen now. Alright, now let's get into the spoilers. I talked a bit about the differences already between Clark and Diana, and the ways they see their alter egos. Specifically, Clark Kent is as much a part of himself as Superman is, where Diana is more of a disguise than a real person. This ends up causing them to break up, and while we don't specifically see that happen on screen, it is mentioned in the death of Superman. I also mentioned John Henry Irons, and how his part of the movie was only his beginning. This is because we do see him again as a prominent character in Reign of the Superman, taking up Superman's mantle after his death, in, as you could guess, the death of Superman. Okay, now we get onto the Nightwing and Robin short. As I mentioned at the start of the video, this was released alongside the movie, and is little over a minute long. It showcases characters we saw in Son of Batman, and will continue to see through the rest of the DCAMU. Anyway, let's break it down quickly. We start with Batman asking for backup, finishing off the Scarecrow case, alluding to the case he was working on when Green Lantern screwed up his plans. In a warehouse, we see Nightwing Dick Grayson and Robin Damian Wayne battle against Scarecrow goons. This altercation being watched by a man in an owl mask. If you know anything about Batman lore, you could probably guess that this is related to the Court of Owls, which we will pick back up on in our next DCAMU film, that being Batman vs. Robin. And that video will be coming out next month. Anyway, that is it for this video. A bit of a 2-in-1 this time. I hope you did enjoy this breakdown. If you did and want to see more of this series, subscribe to see when my next entry comes out, and head on over to my playlist to check out the previous 3 entries. Of course, if you did enjoy, do leave a like and subscribe to see more like this. But until next time, this has been Chris, and I'll be seeing you.